Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is The Witcher 2 Dark Mode Difficulty video walkthrough. We're in Chapter 2, and I am moving through this area of the Vergen camp. You'll notice I've just did a little pirouette for you to show you where it is, because I had a lot of trouble finding this place on my first playthrough, and quite a few side quests revolve around coming through the slums of Vergen. In the, I think it's classed as the non-human district, even though there is definitely a dwarven area to the north. But this is the rough side, and when you come through here, it leads out into kind of like a crazy rocky meadow with a river, and that place leads to a handful of areas that are all going to add to the quests that we're doing. And the one that I've picked up on here is the Dun Banner, I believe. But we're also going to be doing a couple of other quests, or working towards them at the same time. So just be aware that there's certain stuff happening in the video that's all going to add towards other things. For instance, we're going to be doing something towards the, I think it's called With a Flickering Heart side quest as well. So just try and pay attention, and hopefully it'll help you out if you're struggling.
Just wasn't something society was willing to acknowledge.
These will not be here every time, because this was the first time I'd seen them on my previous playthrough. I must have pissed somebody off on this one, because they're here to kill me. There's a bounty on my head. So you're going to get attacked by a ragtag bunch of humans. There's a dwarf, there's some Scoia'tael, and I think, yeah, the Scoia'tael people have the ability to shoot you with bows, which you really don't want, because anything at that distance is a pain in the ass. So I throw a bomb there. You'll also notice the female elf who's just about to die. There you go. She has 2 swords, and on the Rosh side of this game, Geralt has to defend King Henselt against 2 witches, and they're witches from his past. I haven't met them yet on the first game, but I'm looking forward to it. They're called Seret and Orcs. I haven't even heard about them in the book yet. Like in the books I've been reading, I've heard all about Vesemir, I've heard all about Kaer Morhen, where the witches are trained, all about the trials of, you know, grass and changes, all that kind of stuff, but nothing of the 2 mentioned in this, or Letho, for that matter. But they fight almost identically to the way that woman does, because they've got these double swords, and they do these really fancy, almost dance-like movements, which I wonder if you can do that with Geralt if you equip the correct weapon. I don't think you can. Something hopefully they're going to improve on Witcher 3, because Witcher 3 looks so goddamn good in almost every conceivable way. I'm also going to be trying my best to bring some preview videos of Witcher 3 when information comes out, and cover it akin to the way I cover Dark Souls 2 until that gets released shortly. Now, this bit here is kind of bullshitty. There's a really stupid scripted checkpoint. And when I say checkpoint, I've used the wrong term. It's an event trigger that spawns the harpies. And what happens is you move forward and they spawn, you come back and they fuck off. And it's this really awkward thing where you try to go to kill them, and sometimes you'll despawn them. But another thing to bear in mind on this particular area is there's a lot of bandits. And for some reason on my first playthrough, these bandits gave me a big trouble. Terrible English. They gave me trouble. And much more trouble than I expected them to. And it was all because I went on the right-hand path, and on the right-hand path it's very narrow, and you get into these encounters where the crossbow people shoot you from a distance, and the melee people kind of hit you when you come in to hit somebody, because there's that many of them swinging. But if you go the left way, which I have right now, you'll notice the harpies stack up when they turn up, and the bandits will start fighting them. So there's kind of this, you know, triple threat 3-way match happening, and I just took a big hit then. So I need to play better, which hopefully I will, as I roll nearly into another harpy and almost get killed. But recover, get my composure, swing back into him with a quick attack and stun lock to kill. So there's a path to my right here that reaches up that verge where you just saw one of those harpies. And on our way back from the catacombs where we're going, do you see that bullshit? I wasn't even facing him and I hit him with an ard. And I stabbed him, which is always funny. But the verge where those harpies are that you can see now, that leads up to an area that you jump across, and it's going to get you another piece of the ingredients that you're going to need to give to Philippa. And we're just, you know, two birds with one stone on this section. Trying to just move the game along as quickly as possible. But just be aware, there's a lot of harpies that spawn. The spawn points are generally on top of you all the time. And the habit of despawning is really, really irksome. But there's not really much you can do because of the way we've approached the fight. So, you know, just play intelligently. Try not to take as much damage as I did, because my life is really, really low. That's me doing a riposte. Something I would definitely change if I had the modding ability, because it's not good enough, it really isn't. Ripostes mean something to me, and on this game it's pretty shit. Like, you can't even lock on to some of the bosses, so it makes it completely redundant against them, which is another thing I really don't understand. For some reason, especially noticeable in the Letho fights, you can't seem to lock onto him. It doesn't give you the lock-on symbol at all. So from that point onwards, you can't really riposte him, because it doesn't give you the indication that a riposte is even possible, making me think that it's not. So you've just spent those valuable level up points into an ability that cannot be used against, you know, some of the more important bosses in the game. And obviously you can't use it against the big stuff, because games generally work that way. And, you know, if I was part of the dev team, if I was the creative director, that would be different. Big time different. I would have a boss that can do a move that literally can instant kill you regardless of your life. It's got a massive wind up. It's incredibly difficult to dodge, but if you riposte it, you instant kill the boss. And I'm talking frames of, you know, precision needed, literally frame by frame precision. None of that just, you know, Gwyn parry bullshit from Dark Souls. This would be some serious skill displayed. Like, a good example would be if you ever played Onimusha 2, there was an ability called the Issen, which wasn't all that precise at times to do, but for the most it could be really, really finicky. And there were certain types, certain ones were easier than others, but the one where you waited for the very split second for the enemy to attack and you pressed attack and you did the Issen, that was a really, really tough one to time, I found. And it didn't insta-kill them, it just did a really, you know, large amount of damage. And doing it against the bosses was always really dangerous because, you know, bosses did big damage and they were always intimidating and they had really creative attacks. So I always loved that system, and it's one of the main reasons I would really like to see an Onimusha high-def collection. And I have no idea why Capcom didn't make it. Like, it's like they sold it down the river. Because the Onimusha series was never as big as the Resident Evil series, but it was still pretty big for Capcom. You know, there was still quite a lot of acclaim for those games. And I enjoyed them all, even though I didn't play the... Is it Dawn of Dreams? The one that didn't follow the characters? The one that was kind of like a prequel or something? I didn't play that one because it was a little bit too late down the cycle. I was already on to, I think, GameCube at that point. But if you come down here, there's a couple of opportunities to use the Circle of Powers to boost yourself up, because you're going to be going into this catacombs and it's filled with wraiths. So a really good strategy here would be to put something on your blade that's good at killing wraiths, and I think it's called the Spirit something. Like the Spectre Oil, something like that. And it'll probably give you a bit of a... maybe a stronger boost against them. I'm not too sure though, because that kind of information the console doesn't really give you. On PC, it shows you how much damage you're doing on the bottom right-hand corner. It gives you an active feed of the numbers, and that doesn't happen on the 360, which is a big shame, because it could definitely turn the game into a much more meta-like system where you understand how much stronger you are and why you're stronger. Also, there's quite a lot of destructible walls in this place, and how it usually works is you enter a room and you'll spawn a couple of wraiths, like I did just then. And there's lootable corpses, which generally give you trash, which can be sold, but it doesn't sell for that high of a price. There's only one body, or there might be a few others that give you better loot, but for the most, the bodies are shit. And the problem is, when you loot the bodies, you generally summon wraiths, and to fight the least amount of wraiths in this section would literally mean to ignore the bodies. And there's one body in particular that you're going to need. back in Vergen, there's a lady who sells something called sculpture tools, or a scalpel, I think it is. It's a key item, and it tells you it's a key item, so you might have noticed it, you might have wondered what it is. At this point, I don't have it. I'm going to edit it in, because when I originally did this quest, I did not have the tools to start one of the possible answers to the Flickering Heart quest, because I didn't have the scalpel thing. And the reason you're going to need it is one of the bodies that you examine is going to be fresh, and he's going to have something in one of his wounds, and you need the tools to pick it out. And once you pick it out, it gives you evidence that you can give that's going to back up the story of a succubus that we're going to be talking to later on. Once again, you know, we're doing more than one thing at one time at this point, so nothing too complicated. I'm sure you can keep up. This is the guy, anyhow. And I'm going to speed up my examining him, because this was the first time I did this side quest. I actually failed it last time, because I finished this quest, which automatically fails Flickering Heart if you don't do it. So here's me examining all the wounds, and Geralt doing his piece and saying things. And as you can see, there's a lot of claw slashes on this fella, but there's something stuck in his arm there in one of his wounds. There's also hair in his fingers. So this is a crossfade showing you me and Vergen picking up the surgical tools. These are the tools you're going to need to pick the shit out of his arm. And hopefully you picked that up before you came here, so you can do this. So there we go. And what this is essentially doing is, this is showing that the wounds on him, although they do look like he was attacked by a beast, it's now with this splinter of steel that it perhaps is a little bit more nefarious than it first seemed. So now with that, it's going to allow me to back up the succubus's plea. But what we originally came here to do was to find the Dun Banner, and if you know the history of the game and the history of the battle at Sodden, I think it was, you will be able to answer all the questions of this guy. Even if you read some of the stuff on this game, you can understand a lot of the battle. And if you're on the Rosh side, you can get a lot of exposition that'll tell you about the battle. And I'm not too sure if you can on Iorveth's, but the answers are there if you know them. And at this point, I didn't know them, so I'm going to fight the guy. But if you tell him all the answers that he needs, he'll give you a sword. And I think it's called the Sword of the Dun Banner. And I don't think it's anywhere near as good as the ones we have, thanks to those, you know, those cool ones we picked up. But it's still a good one if you're lacking, or if you're a completionist, something like that. But we're not going to get it, because unfortunately I'm going to fight and kill him. Which, you know, if you can't be asked to answer the questions or find the answers for them, you can kill him too. He's very simple. He's just like any other soldier, really. You should just feel a little bit bad for doing it, because he's a kind of a decent guy. But speaking of GameCubes, as I mentioned earlier, I've been watching a lot of speedruns lately, and I've got to say, folks, I've never really been into speedruns. I didn't really get them. You know, it's not something I've ever really wanted to do. It's not really something for me, because it's just not. But some of the things that people discover that make a lot of the speedruns possible are pretty interesting to watch. So I'm starting to understand why people do watch it. And I've been watching some, and it's been making me want to go back to some of the older games, you know, crack out the GameCube and bang on some of those quality titles. And I think it's because at this moment in time, you know, gaming is kind of dead at this point. We're very close to another milestone where a ton of games are coming out, but you know, since November, since the deluge of titles, you know, unless you got a new console, and even if you did, you've probably played everything on it, because there's hardly anything there. You know, unless you're the type of person that gets all into the competitive multiplayer stuff and you play with your friends a lot with that kind of stuff. Like, there's been no releases of anything, I think, all that worth playing for quite some time. So this is that opportunity for people to go back and, you know, try some of the stuff. So I've kind of been more excited to play older stuff than I have some of the newer stuff. So it's, you know, it's fun to be excited for something, because there really hasn't been anything to get excited for, unless you know, you want to destroy yourself by getting excited over Dark Souls 2 or Titanfall or whatever game it is that's quite close but still a little bit distant. I find these days that kind of ignoring how excited I am for one of those games is the best way to do it, because if I dwell on it, it just makes the wait worse. And if I don't think about it, sometimes I forget and the time flies. So that's my defense mechanism for that kind of stuff anyway. But this is the dude that you need to talk to. So I tell him I've served in the Dun banner. And on this one you need to tell him it's the third option. And I told him the wrong one, you see, because I didn't know the answer. And he fights me, so this is the Ghost of the Banner. I'm going to use Ard, because it's the most powerful spell on the game. And he's going to have a hard time, unfortunately. But it's all, you know, in the name of good stuff. He is already dead, so I suppose we're not ruining his day too much. And there is, look, you can even do the insta-kill on this guy. Like, so powerful. Wickedly powerful. And now that we've done that, all we need to do is get the Dun banner from the sarcophagus. And there you go, Death Symbolised is complete. The only thing left to do now is to go all the way back to Vergen and to talk to Philippa and tell her that you've got one more piece of what you need. So thank you for watching, and you take care now.